Okay, we're live now.
Cool.
Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're delighted to have you all here and can't wait to get into the session. My name is Satiksha. I'm the video content manager at ZNotes.
Hello, and my name is Bear. I'm the founder of ZNotes and will be your host for today.
This event is brought to you by ZNotes, an education platform built by students for students. ZNotes provides free, high quality educational resources and peer to peer learning to address global educational inequality. Thanks to our passionate and supportive student community, we have reached nearly 5 million learners worldwide and continue to grow our student numbers and impact.
This webinar is part of our wider Uni Guide series designed to support students on their journey towards higher education by providing them with essential information, expert insights, and dedicated advice.
Today's event is presented in partnership with Socrasica, an online platform that helps students applying to top universities by providing expert advice and feedback from subject dedicated tutors. We're delighted to have them involved.
So, our topic today is how to get a personal statement ready for Oxbridge. And some of you might be in the midst of applying with the October 15th deadline coming up. So, we'll be covering ways for you to structure your personal statement, methods to attract readers, and how to sell yourself without adopting cliche responses. We also have some examples from previous years to give you some additional insights. Socrasica are represented by Andrew, co-founder of Socrasica and a former LSE teacher, and Harman Tutz, Cambridge history grad and former personal statement reviewer, here to talk to you more in detail about these topics. Thanks so much for joining.
Before we
Thank you.
dive in, I'd like to remind everyone that there's a dedicated Q&A session at the end. So please share your questions in the chat at any time as we'll be answering these in the final third of the session. Now I'd like to hand over to Sokresha to introduce your speakers for today.
Thank you very much. So, can we get those slides up on screen?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, hello and welcome everyone to this presentation on how to write the perfect personal statement by Socrasica. So, just by way of introduction to get us started, I'm Andrew. I'm one of the co-founders at Socrasica. My educational background is quite interesting. So I actually dropped out of school when I was 16 years old. I just hated sitting in a classroom, wanting to put my hand up and ask questions, but I was too afraid of looking stupid. So I ended up leaving at 16 years of age and self-studied all of my A-levels watching YouTube videos. And lo and behold, I ended up winning the Harvard Prize for highest A-level grades in the year. So I averaged about 98.2%. I received offers from Cambridge and LSE at undergraduate level and from Oxford at postgraduate level. I've worked as a teacher at the London School of Economics. And I now have over 10 years experience in university admissions. The last 5 of those years have been in part as part of Socrasica. And I'm joined by one of our former Socrasica statement reviewers, Harman. So Harman studied history at Cambridge, and you also did your exchange year at Harvard, right? Which did you prefer, Harman?
I'd definitely say the kind of the original Cambridge, University of. I'd definitely say that. But had a great time at Harvard.
Very cool. So Harman will be available at the end for any questions and answers about applying to the UK or US and things of that nature. So diving into the presentation, over the last 10 years now, we've reviewed over 40,000 personal statements, and we've helped students gain offers from Cambridge and Oxford, LSE, Durham, Warwick, UCL, etc., all of the UK's most elite institutions. But I want to dive into just one very specific success story that I'm personally very proud of. So this is Rakibul, and Rakibul, when we first met him, he was in a very desperate, disheartened state because he previously applied to university and only got one offer from the University of Westminster, ranked 741st in the world. And so Rakibul came to us and he was like, "Look, guys, I really want to get into a good, prestigious, high-ranking institution." And so we worked with him over the next few months, rewriting his personal statement from scratch. And he ended up, without changing any of his grades or any other tweaks, getting an offer from UCL, ranked number 9 in the world, one of the world's greatest universities. And all that changed in between those two scenarios was Rakable's personal statement. So I say this just to press upon you the real importance of writing an excellent personal statement and the transformative power it can have on where you end up at university and henceforth the rest of your life. So just a quick outline of today's presentation. We'll start with a quick application timeline. We'll then get into best practices around writing your personal statement, common mistakes, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. And for everyone who stays till the end, we will also be sharing 10 successful Oxbridge personal statements with feedback and a personal statement cheat sheet to help you write your own perfect personal statement. All right, so just to quickly get some of these logistical details out of the way, this presentation is specifically for students applying to UK universities, specifically Oxbridge. This is for students applying this year to university, so during the 2024-2025 admission cycle to start university in 2025. If you're applying later, that's wonderful. You'll still gain a tremendous amount of value from this presentation, but the personal statement will be changing next year. So there will be some tweaks and differences. And finally, as Zubair mentioned earlier on, the deadline to apply to Oxbridge in the UK is October 15th at 6 p.m. UK time. All right, so let's get into the first and perhaps most important part of the personal statement. It's structure. So here we have 3 different structures. So in structure A, you can see there's an introduction, topic paragraph, then some extracurriculars mixed in, topic paragraph, then a conclusion. For part B, there's introduction, 2 quite beefy topic paragraphs, and then an extracurriculars and conclusion paragraph. And then part C, there's an introduction, 3 topic paragraphs, and then an extracurriculars and conclusion paragraph. So I'd like everyone who's attending live just to guess in the chat, which of these do you think is the right way to structure your personal statement, the most optimal, the most likely to get you all of your offers? So maybe if we give seconds or something like that, Zubair.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to just comment on the YouTube live stream and we'll be looking up at what the responses are. So between options A, B, and C on the structure of your personal statement. Mana says C. Any other thoughts? Khadija says A. We have another A and another C and A and A. I think we're between A's and C's, it seems like, Andrew. Tiny bit of popularity with A's. What do you think? So would love to hear what the actual structure is. I'm quite curious as well. I don't think I know the right answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So the A's are wrong. The correct structure is C. And the reason for this is most elite institutions, so Oxford and UCL, explicitly state that they want 80% of your statement to be academic. At the end of the day, you're applying to elite academic institutions to study a highly academic degree. And so mixing in your personal statements, your extracurriculars halfway through your personal statement is not recommended. Instead, that should be all pushed towards the end. And instead, the first 80% of your personal statement should center around the academic reasons that you want to study your particular subject at university. And so your introduction and those 3 topic paragraphs should be purely academic. And then at the end, just to show that you're a well-rounded person, that you're able to manage your time well, you can get in a bit of your personality in the extracurriculars and conclusion sections. So this is what we recommend as the ideal structure. And the problem with B was that although a lot of it is still academic, there are only 2 topic paragraphs, whereas having 3 topic paragraphs allows you to show off your diversity of interest and breadth of topic understanding. You don't want to show that you're only interested in one specific aspect of your subject. You want to show that you're quite widely interested and you know a lot about what happens within your subject at degree level. So just to put some flesh on the bone here, in terms of what this might actually look like in practice, and obviously we're going to get into more detail, let's say this is an economics personal statement. You might start off with an introduction about how, for example, you notice that your grandfather in Sri Lanka was deeply affected by fluctuating exchange rates, which crippled his fishing business, something like that. You then explain how this inspired you to research economics further, and this is what consolidated your motivation to get into university. So that might go in your introduction, and then you could have one topic paragraph on microeconomics, a second topic paragraph on macroeconomics, and perhaps a third on behavioral economics or economics of history. And then at the very end, you squeeze in all of your extracurriculars and conclude. If instead you're applying to medicine, you could start off with a particular operation you observed during work experience that really inspired you, talk about how that motivated you to study medicine at university. Then first topic paragraph could be about some medical research you've done. I don't know, perhaps nanotechnology to screen for cancers. Second could be more in depth about your work experience. And then your third topic paragraph could be about another work experience you've done or another topic that you've researched within biomedical research or something along those lines. And then finally, again, extracurriculars and conclusion. So where things get a little bit more tricky is if you've got a mixed personal statement. So let's say you're applying for computer science and philosophy. So there you'll want to mix between the two. So you'll want to have an opening paragraph that mentions both topics. And then your topic paragraphs could alternate. So the first could talk about computer science, then philosophy, and then you could find a topic that interweaves those two. So you could talk about the ethics of AI. So ethics, a nice philosophy topic, and AI, a computer science topic. And then again, extracurriculars and conclude. So Mana just asked about an accounting and finance personal statement. So again, this isn't quite a mixed topic, but yes, so you'd want an introduction that explains why accounting and finance is interesting to you. You might want your first topic paragraph to focus just on accounting, second to focus more on finance, financial modeling, and then your third to bring those two subject areas together, although they are intrinsically very much linked. Okay, so that's the ideal structure. Now let's get into the meat and bones of it. So let's get into your introduction. So again, we've got 3 introduction paragraphs here, and I'd like you guys to guess which of these introduction paragraphs is good and which are bad. So I'd like you to vote in the comments which of these introductory paragraphs would increase your chances of getting into university. So I'll give you a few seconds, just to maybe 30 seconds to read option A, and then we can go through B and C as well. And then after that, you can vote for which one you think is the best. Okay, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to read through option A. Next, we've got option B, so another 30, 40 seconds. Okay, and finally, we've got introduction paragraph C. So another 30, 40 seconds to read through this one. And then I'd like you all to vote, just like you did last time, on which one you think is the best.
Very different styles.
Very different styles, yes.
So we've just opened up voting. So feel free again to start just sending a letter in, thinking through which ones were the best in your opinion. So was it option A, option B, or option C?
Just as a reminder, that was A, the law one, that was B, economics one, and C was management. Okay, interesting. So C's and A's coming in yet again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It seems like quite an even split, although this is just me trying to like figure out from a bunch of text.
Yeah, looks like it.
But maybe before we get into it, Andrew, tell me why B is so unpopular. Why are people not enjoying it?
Yeah, so I think B is quite basic. It doesn't show much of the student's motivation, and it seems quite dictionary definition in nature. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it seems lacking in specific details, extra supercurricular research, and it just reads quite basic, like the introduction of an economics textbook. It's quite boring as well.
All right, let's dive in. So what was the right answer? Yes.
So option C was correct. And for those of you who chose option A, I'll just read to you what an admissions tutor said about option A. This is an empty opening statement with no examples cited to back it up. The weak attempt to define law wastes space and provides no useful details about the applicant. So, so option A was shown to actually decrease a student's chance of getting into university. Same with option B. It's only option C that actually increased a student's chance of getting an offer. And the reason for that is option C does a few really important things very well. They provide specific examples throughout. They provide evidence of further research, and they explain their motivation. So if we just look back at option C, it starts with a story with lots of specific examples about the student's real life experience interning at a bank. After that, they get into further research they've done. So they show that they've taken initiative to learn more by reading Amazon's company biography, The Everything Store. And then finally, they explain that, after reading about Bezos's management practices and how that scaled Amazon into the world's biggest retail site, it's shown them the importance of management. So we get everything there. We get a really nice specific example of what inspired them to get more interested in management. They back it up with clear super curricular reading. And finally, they explain how this motivates them to learn more about management. So that's why C takes the trophy. And now, if we go back to B falls into one of the most classical errors that students make with personal statements, which is definitions and descriptions. So they try to define economics. Now, at Oxbridge, this personal statement is going to be read by potentially an economics professor, at the very least an economics lecturer. So someone who's dedicated 20, 30 years to studying economics. They really don't need a student to define economics for them. They already know what it is. They probably wrote the definition. So they don't need you to sort of parrot it back to them. What instead we want is evidence of, again, further research you've done, a specific example of a topic in economics that really excited you, and again, just a show of that motivation for why you're studying your subject. And finally, just to explain option A, and the reason this was so bad is it falls into this category of vague, generic waffle. So look, there are lots of nice buzzwords there, like the all-encompassing importance of law, amazed at the way crime is moderated. But where are the specifics? Where's the actual research that students have done? Where's evidence of your motivation? None of that's really here. It's all just waffle. It's the sort of thing that you'd expect ChatGPT or something to write up. There's no depth, there's no specificity. And so just to summarize what makes a great introduction, it's specific examples or a believable story. If you don't have one, if you don't have real life experience with your subject, just look it up. So type in, for example, chemistry, news, and find an article that really excites you. Once you've done that, you can link it to further research. So you really want to show early on that you're capable of further research, that you have the intellectual curiosity to find out more about your subject. And then finally, link it back to your motivation to study at university. So something along the lines of, this inspired me to study my particular subject at degree level, or I'm excited to learn more about my particular subject at degree level. But what you want to stay away from is quotes, definitions, descriptions of your subject, and vague generic waffle. We want this to be super personal, really specific to your own interests, back it up with evidence, Show that you've read an article or watched a lecture or something that goes beyond just A-level or what ChatGPT could come up with. And finally, link it back to studying at university and linking it back to your motivation. So
one question, Andrew. You mentioned the word supercurricular. I'm sure our audience is keen to understand what that means.
Yes, absolutely. So extracurricular and supercurricular sometimes get mixed up. So extracurricular, that's stuff that is not relevant to your academic subject. So it's things like snowboarding, watching Netflix, going to the gym, painting flowers. So that's extracurricular. Supercurricular is going above the curriculum. So for example, in A-level economics or IB economics, you might study behavioral economics. So that's curricular. Supercurricular would then be going and reading an academic research paper on behavioral economics, or watching a TED talk or an online lecture on behavioral economics. So the idea is supercurricular is anything that goes above the standard IB A-level curriculum. I hope that clarifies things.
That does. Thanks so much. And I think it starts to address some of Khadija's questions as well.
Yes, exactly. And so, Khadija, you're absolutely correct. Yes, your topic paragraphs should almost exclusively focus on supercurriculars. So we're going to get into that in just a second. So we've TikTok intro, and yes, topic paragraphs are coming up next. So again, same exercise, 3 topic paragraphs. One of them would increase your chances of getting into university. The other 2 would decrease your chances. So have a quick read of option A. I'll give you guys maybe 45 seconds to give this one a read through.
Thanks.
Okay, hopefully that's enough time. So that's topic paragraph A. This is topic paragraph B. So again, another 30, 40 seconds. Okay, cool. And then finally, this is topic paragraph C. So again, another 30, 40 seconds, and then please start voting. All right, cool. So we've got some votes coming in. Just as a quick reminder, C is the physics one, B is the economics one, and the first is a medical topic paragraph. Okay.
We have an A and a B.
Okay.
Let's see some other thoughts as well.
Another
A, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Jessica and Minha. Okay, maybe one more deciding vote because it could go either way, right? Okay, let's give it to A. Okay, yeah, Tuba says A as well. So we have A as a winner. Why? What's the right one, Andrew? And then tell us which one we
The
go.
answer is A. So A is the correct answer this time around. And so this is
Okay.
what a university admissions tutor had to say about A. Excellent analysis of complex case. The student actually shows their understanding of communication skills rather than simply stating how important they are. And the reflection at the end shows their maturity. So with topic paragraphs, it's really important to, once again, show lots of specific details, show off that in-depth research, but it's also important to reflect on your research, to show that you've learned things from it, to show how your research experience have inspired you to study your subject. And that's what topic paragraph A does so well. There's so much specificity, there's so much detail about the 4,000 milliliters, the 50% survival prognosis. So this really proves to university admissions tutor that this student has actually done the work. They've actually carried out this research. They haven't just, I don't know, read a book summary or again, asked ChatGPT. There's lots of really high detail specificity here. So that's wonderful. But on top of that, throughout this paragraph, the student explains what they learned and what it taught them. So as an example, at some point they say, encountering both clinical and social challenges of the treatment prompted me to research alternatives, including autologous pancreatic islet cell transplantation. And so this shows that the student hasn't just learnt about clinical and social challenges. They've been curious enough to go and further research it. And then later on, they say, from this, I realize the crucial role of primary care services in promoting healthy lifestyles to prevent the onset of disease. And so, again, the student reflects on what they've actually taken away, some realizations they came up with.
Yeah.
The only thing
Andrew,
go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, one quick question. It's super complicated though, right? It's very technical, and sometimes we're worried about like using too many technical words. Oh, do we need to define everything? They never defined anything about the treatment, about the procedure. Why is that okay?
Yes. So again, remember who's reading these personal statements, right? So it's largely academics with a very deep understanding of their subject, and so showing off some technical terminology, showing off an in-depth understanding is very impressive. You're not writing this for a lay audience. You're not writing this so your mum can read it. You're writing it so university academics can get into it and feel that you're taking the subject seriously.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Cool. And so the only thing that topic paragraph A, the only way we could improve it is by linking back. And so right at the end, the student does link back implicitly. So they say they've realized the crucial role of primary care services. They could maybe just add on one extra clause here, something like further inspiring me to study medicine at degree level, something along those lines. Really, each of your topic paragraphs, you want to link back to why you want to study at university. And so if we look at then paragraph C, the reason this was so weak is all the student does is list. So they've listed like 10 different things they've done, from this lecture to books to podcasts, but there's no depth, there's no reflection, there's no specificity. There are no details to prove to me they've actually done any of these things. So if instead of, for example, in the towards the end of the first line, they say, watching lectures from the Royal Academy of Physics. Which lectures? By whom? What did you learn from each lecture? What was the topic? And then link that back to why you want to study at university. But instead, the student just goes on a massive listing rampage, if you will. And then finally, if we get to paragraph B, so the issue here is that the student just mentions their A-levels. So this is another faux pas or sin of the topic paragraphs. It's wonderful to mention your A-levels if you then link that to super curricular interests, extra research you've done, like lectures and TED Talks and further reading. But if you just talk about your A-levels for one of these topic paragraphs, you're not really proving your intellectual curiosity to universities, you're not really showing off your interest or excitement for the subject. You're just, everybody's studied this at A level or IB, and so you're not going above what any other student knows already from A level. Remember, with your UCAS application, universities already know what A level subjects you've studied. So this is the point of the personal statement, is to show the things you've done above and beyond A level. Ultimately, you're applying to study your subject for 3 years at higher level. And so it's important that you show some understanding of what your subject looks like at more advanced levels. So you can talk about your A levels, but it needs to be a springboard into more advanced material. So for instance, if this student mentioned A level economics and behavioral economics at the start, but then went on to talk about, to learn more about behavioral economics, I watched Dan Ariely's TED talk on the behavioral economics of lying. Something like that would show to universities that this student is serious, they've done the research, they really know what their subject's about, and they're passionate and excited about it. So to summarize then, topic paragraphs, again, we want to go really heavy on specific details, show off that in-depth research. Don't be afraid of terminology. Make sure it's still comprehensible, but there's nothing wrong with using advanced terminology and going deep into your subject. But don't let it get too impersonal. So make sure to reflect, talk about what you've learned, and ultimately link it back to why this all inspires you to study your subject at university. Stay away from simply listing things. Stay away from simply describing a lecture you watched. You want to reflect on it. You want to talk about what you learned from it, not just describe the lecture. And although it's okay to mention A levels, it's a problem when you just mention A levels. So hopefully that summarizes topic paragraphs. And that leaves us with just the extracurriculars and conclusion section. So once again, 3 examples. So I think you know the drill by now. So I'll give you 30 seconds to read through paragraph A, and then we'll get into B and C. Okay, I think that's long enough for paragraph A. So have a read of paragraph B next. Okay, and finally, paragraph C. And when you finish reading, it's time to vote one last time. So is it paragraph C, is it paragraph B, or paragraph A? Which is the best final paragraph, the best extracurricular and conclusion paragraph?
Lucas thinks C is awesome. We're getting a lot of C's this time around.
Nice. So I'll put you out of your misery. Yeah, so C is the correct answer. And so I'm really glad that everybody got that. Yes, C fulfills the primary objective of the extracurriculars and conclusion paragraph, which is to sound busy. So again, you're applying to very academic institutions for an academic subject. the only real point of your extracurriculars and conclusion paragraph is to show that you're busy, that you're capable of managing a really heavy, high workload. And so what C does is you read it, the kids got so much going on, it's really impressive. They've won awards. They mention the time commitment. For example, training now for 10 years, 6 times a week, 3 hours a day. It's so impressive that this student is able to balance that on top of top grades. So that's really what you're trying to show off in your extracurriculars and conclusion paragraph. You want to sound busy, give specific details, specifically about how much time things take you, assuming they take a long time. You don't want to mention that you train tennis 5 minutes a week. But if you're training tennis 5 hours a week, that's now very impressive because you're doing that alongside your A-levels. Mention any skills that you've learned, mention anything that you've reflected on or learned from it, and then wrap up with a really strong concluding sentence. So again, going back to extracurricular and conclusion paragraph C, we've got, I'm excited to combine my scientific and management skills in the field of biomedicine at university. So you get that excitement, you get that passion. If we compare that to option A, I look forward to studying at your university. A bit blah and also quite presumptuous because this student doesn't have any offers yet. So to say they look forward to studying at a particular institution might come across as a little bit arrogant. B is better. I feel that I have the right qualities to become a doctor. But again, I very much look forward to starting the course. Again, you don't have an offer yet, so there's nothing to look forward to. So try to keep it humble, show that excitement. And that's really what you're looking for with the extracurriculars paragraph. So you might notice that listing is in orange here. And that's because listing in your extracurricular paragraph, contrary to what I've said for the rest of your personal statement, is okay. So if you don't have space, because extracurriculars are less important than the rest of your personal statements, it's okay to just list out a few different things that you've done without a huge amount of depth or specificity, just to show that you're busy, that you've got things going on. Again, this is the least important paragraph in your personal statement, but you still want to end strong and you still want to squeeze in as many different extracurriculars as possible to show off that, hey, look, not only am I an academic weapon, I also have all of this other stuff going on in my life and I'm able to balance it. And so the university workload is going to be a piece of cake for me. So that summarizes extracurricular and conclusion.
Amazing. I have to say the first time I've actually seen the sound busy being kind of like really included. And it's really important, I think, for our audience to really understand how important it is to keep extracurriculars, but also how less important it becomes in your personal statement, because it's really just showing that you can manage your time, right? You can do passion, you can do your things that you enjoy doing, but you also really need to show that you're basically super academically inclined.
Yeah, absolutely. And also feel free to show off a bit more personality in your extracurriculars. So if you have a unique hobby, like, I don't know, snowboarding or painting mugs or something like that, this is a nice place to show that you're not a robot. You're not like every other student applying. There's a little bit more going on for you. So that's extracurricular and conclusion. Cool.
Thank you.
And so that is the anatomy of the perfect personal statement. What we're going to get into next is just some of the most common mistakes that students make when actually getting to the writing of their personal statement. Zubair, I don't know if you've got any questions from the audience before we continue.
No, I think we have some like longer questions we might come into at the end of the full presentation, so we can go straight into it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So here is mistake number 1. So I'd like you guys just to give this a quick read, and then if one or two of you would like to guess what the mistake is, what mistake the students make, and then I will reveal all. So I'll give you 30 seconds to read through and have a guess as to what mistake the students made here. Any ideas?
So
Yeah,
Femi says there's too much persuasive language, and again, assuming they'll go to uni.
absolutely. So they've made the mistake of assuming they'll go to uni. Yeah, I look forward to extending my research at degree level. However, the real problem with this this intro paragraph is the fancy words. The yes, Tuba, you've also made a good point. No evidence to back up their personal statement, but the primary problem here was the overuse of fancy language. So we see this very often. Students will use the thesaurus and just try and cram in as much fanciful vocabulary as possible. The primary culprits are words like manifest, thus, elucidate, utilize, endeavor. There are times where that vocabulary is definitely appropriate, but if you're just using it to show off and sound more intelligent, somebody who spent their entire life reading academic papers isn't going to be impressed by this, and it can kind of end up making you look a little bit silly. Femi's made a good point there. The guy thinks he's Shakespeare. Yeah, exactly that. So transcends multidisciplinary boundaries. Numerous research needs to ascertain key findings in my studies thus far. So all of these things are just a little bit over the top, and you want to keep your language clear and appropriate. So use advanced terminology when you need to use advanced terminology. But if you can say therefore instead of thus, or shows instead of elucidates, then or shows instead of manifests, or explains instead of elucidates, then use the appropriate language for your personal statement. Okay, mistake 2, and just because we're running a little bit low on time, I'm going to reveal this one to you. So mistake 2 is the fake expert. So give this one a little read and see if you can work out what I mean by fake expert.
I think it'll be an honor to have him welcome to this institution.
Yeah, exactly. So what the Zubair's alluding to is that this guy seems a little bit up himself, a little bit arrogant, and he's coming across as if he's an expert in this subject, when obviously he's probably just a 17, 18-year-old kid applying to university. So he knows relatively little about politics, but he says things like, a new school of politics must be born. He says that we will see the need for a new politics emerging very soon. And then he ends up on this note of, my nuanced understanding of politics will make me a great asset to your institution. Pompous, Femi says, yes, absolutely. So pompous and trying to come across as more of an expert, more proficient than you are in your subject. So again, you're applying to university. You haven't studied at university yet. You're not expected to be an expert. You're just expected to show real interest and show that you've done the research, but you don't need to have developed a new political theory or anything like that. All right, so getting into mistake 3. So if you read the first sentence, ever since I can remember, I've wanted to be an architect. This probably gives the game away. So this is the problem of cliches. So on the right hand side here, you'll see phrases that are repeatedly used in UCAS personal statements. So from a young age, I've always been interested in. This comes up 309 times a year. An early age, I've always been interested in. 292 times a year. That exact phrase, or I'm currently studying, 600 times a year. So you really want to stay away from some of these cliche phrases. And as we discussed before, your introduction should start with something more specific and more personal to you, because nobody's buying this. Nobody's buying that since you came out of the womb, you wanted to be an economist or a lawyer. We want real reasons that you're interested in your subject. Okay. And cliches extend beyond just the language you use. So you can also fall into the trap of using cliche books or cliche lectures. So in the subject guides that we've shared with ZNotes, you can actually read what books or lectures to avoid for certain subjects. For example, in an economics personal statement, if you mention Freakonomics, a very popular economics book, that is an immediate red flag for admissions tutors, not because there's anything wrong with the book, but just because admissions tutors have seen this book mentioned so many times, it immediately puts them off a personal statement. Okay. So finally, mistake 4, or penultimately mistake 4. So these are grammatical mistakes. So obviously there are hundreds of grammatical mistakes that we see, but here are a few sentences. Each contains some grammar mistakes, and I would be curious to know how many mistakes you can spot. So I'll give you all maybe just 1 minute, and I'd like you to comment with how many grammar mistakes you can see. Okay, so Lucas can see 4. Same, Femi as well. Okay, cool. So the actual answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grammatical mistakes. So this is the trouble, especially if English isn't your first language. It's very easy to fall into this trap of small grammatical mistakes. None of these were super consequential. You can still understand all of these sentences very well. But when you're submitting an application as important as your personal statement, it's really important that you make sure all of those grammatical mistakes are sorted out. So this is just a broader point about proofreading your personal statement and really paying a lot of attention to the phrasing you're using and making sure all of the sentences make sense and they're correctly grammatically structured. Just as an example, a very common mistake that the students will make in sentence 1 is here the student said, "My experience shadowing these doctors and reading scientific literature." Previously it was have, because it looks like there are two things going on: shadowing these doctors and reading scientific literature. So 2 things, and that should then lead to have as the correct conjugation. But actually it's my experience, and then sort of in parentheses, shadowing these doctors and reading scientific literature. So it should be has to correspond to the singular my experience. So sorry if that's a little bit technical, but these are the sorts of things that are important to your personal statement to make sure that you've really crossed your T's and dotted your I's. Everything is 100%, and you don't get flagged for bad grammar in your personal statement. Okay, and finally, mistake number 5. We're running a little bit low on time, so I'm just going to reveal this one. As you can see, it's quite a long, bloated paragraph, and this student has fallen into the trap of over-describing. So over-describing is when a student takes some of our previous advice too far. So they've been talking here about the Stanford prison experiment. This is a psychology personal statement, and they've just gone into so much detail describing the experiment. So this feels much more like an essay than a personal statement. The way I would describe a personal statement is it's somewhere between an essay, a love letter, and an autobiography. Okay, so here the student has just gone full essay mode. They've gone into lots of detail about the Stanford prison experiment, but they've left no space for personal reflections, no space to show off their enthusiasm, no space to explain why this particular experiment inspired them to study at university. So that's mistake number 5, and it's a very careful balance. You obviously want to provide some specific details, but not so much that it overwhelms your personal statement and there's no space for you, no space for your own thoughts, opinions, critical thinking, etc. Okay, so those are 5 of the most common personal statement mistakes that we see, but in reality there are dozens of personal statement mistakes that pop up again and again and again, and that's why it's so important that you get feedback on your personal statement. The problem is, studies show, and so this is a study called Making a Statement by Dr. Stephen Jones at Manchester University, that this study found that 75% of teachers' personal statement judgments are wrong. And so if you look at this graph here, what you'll see in blue is the university score, and in orange, the teacher score. So in the first pair of bar graphs, I suppose, you see that the university positively scored a student's personal statement, whereas teachers gave it a negative score, the exact opposite. Whereas in the second example, universities gave the personal statement a negative score, teachers gave it a positive score. So not only can personal statement feedback from teachers sometimes not be useful, sometimes it can honestly be dangerous to your personal statement, and teachers can, unfortunately, because they're not trained in what makes a good personal statement, inadvertently advise you to do the exact opposite of what universities are really looking for. One very striking example, if I just go back to one of the paragraphs we've already read. So I think a lot of you got that A was the best paragraph here, and indeed the university admissions tutor said excellent analysis of a complex case, etc. What the teacher said here was too much medical information. This section is too long and impersonal. So the exact opposite again of what the admissions tutor was looking for. And so that's why getting feedback is not enough. You need expert feedback. And that's why we co-founded Socrasica, a company that's dedicated to bringing together experts to help students write the perfect personal statements. So on Socrasica, you can get your personal statement professionally reviewed by yours truly, or for example, we also have Revi Penida here. So he's actually he's a lecturer at Oxford and LSE, and he actually carries out the Oxford PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics interviews at Corpus Christi College at Oxford. And so with Socrasica, you're in very safe hands. And we now offer unlimited personal statement reviews, where on top of being able to send your personal statement back again and again and again until it reaches that point of perfection, you can also get all of your spelling and grammatical mistakes reviewed. You can get it looked over by a subject specialist to make sure you haven't made any content or subject specific errors. All feedback's returned within 48 hours and usually much sooner. You get fact checked, and there's an AI and plagiarism detection. So if you're interested in using some of our services, you can head over to socrasica.com. And as a thank you to Zubair for all of his wonderful work at ZNotes, we're offering ZNotes students a discount, 10% discount with the code ZNotes10, and that's at socrasica.com. Otherwise, that's everything from this presentation. So I think we can open up to questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And again, thank you for being so awesome with your time, advice, and offering that amazing discount to our community. I will hide the slides now, bring Harman back on stage, and we will go into Q&A. So I know that you guys have been asking questions along the way as well. Really appreciate the engagement. But we have Andrew and Harman for a little bit more time. So we'd love to hear any questions you may have specific to personal statement writing, Oxbridge applications, and university pathways that Andrew and Harman can share their responses to. I want to start with a question from Manha, which is actually a really good question. How can I practice my personal statement? So how do I start doing it? How do I start building a perfect personal statement? Maybe Andrew, you can kick off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would start with the structure. So again, you've got intro, 3 topic paragraphs, and then your extracurricular and conclusion. So I would start by working out what you want to go in each of those paragraphs. So I don't know what subject you're studying, Manha, but let's suppose it's economics, just because that's my background. So again, you could write up a structure. Perhaps you want to start with something like behavioral economics in your intro. Then you want to talk about micro, maybe statistics. And then maybe your third topic paragraph is about recent macroeconomic fluctuations, something like that. Start with that structure and then see what comes up for you. So start writing up everything you know under those different topic headings. And really a great way to start is just get everything onto the page. And from there, you can cut out the stuff that sounds a bit mediocre, that doesn't comply with some of the guidelines we've set out, and you can keep the stuff that resonates, that feels more powerful, that feels more convincing. So a slightly high level answer there, but hopefully that helps.
Thanks for that, Andrew. I have a question. Well, yeah. View has a question. Is Oxford worth it? And I think it's the question I was going to ask you as well, because you told me that you applied and got into Cambridge as well and Oxford, and you took decisions to not continue there as well. So why and what was the decision making there?
Sure. So I think Harman and I will have contrasting opinions on this. So for my postgraduate degree, I studied a master's at Oxford University, and I withdrew after the first term because I found that it was a lot of the material they were teaching wasn't as advanced as advertised, and the amount of contact time you had with some of the professors was quite limited. So you weren't able to learn as much as typically advertised. It's not what I expected from an Oxford degree. But Harman, obviously you studied at Cambridge, but there's some similarities there. So what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the obvious difference is that, like, an undergraduate and postgraduate degree at Oxbridge are very different. And I will say and admit that an Oxbridge postgraduate degree is very independent. And I guess, like, that's a bit of a flaw of those degrees. But kind of in contrast, I would say my undergraduate degree in history at Cambridge was 100% worth it. I developed a lot of thinker and actually spent a lot of time with academics during my time with weekly supervisions and kind of regular feedback, which definitely refined my thinking, improved my writing skills, and yeah, I mean, I think developed my skills such that I feel like an effective worker in the kind of in the world of work. And also, I think just I guess the last point on that is like going to Oxbridge over an NSE, an Imperial, whatever. It definitely feels like a more well-rounded education. I think it definitely encourages you to pursue further extracurriculars. So yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, guys. Lots of questions coming up with lots of context as well. So let me start with Femi's. He's applying to study law at Oxford, and he wants to make his personal statement more Oxfordy. He started and seems good, and he's yet to include his extracurriculars. So I guess maybe his question is around like, what are the super curricular activities that really stand out? You talked about reading books, watching lectures. I also want to recognize that a lot of our viewers are from all over the world, and they may not have access to all the opportunities of going into, let's say, the Royal Academy or whatever. So how do we go about that and really build a super curricular experience as well?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. Firstly, in terms of lecture access, the vast majority of lectures are now available online, completely free on YouTube or a similar platform. So you don't need to turn up to the Royal Society of Economics. You can watch a Royal Society of Economics lecture online, and that has exactly the same value. In your personal statement, all you have to say is watching this lecture instead of attending this lecture. Fundamentally, it's about what you learned and how you're able to critically engage with that material, not where you were in the world. But then secondly, so a lot of the advice here is, well, all of the advice here really is Oxford and Cambridge specific. In terms of making even more Oxfordy, one thing you could do is look up the actual Oxford Law undergraduate reading list. So this is a little bit, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this. I don't think it's going to help particularly. But if you're really dead set on Oxford, you could have a quick read through. You could pick out one or two items from the Oxford Law undergraduate reading list. And you could mention that in your personal statement. The risk in doing that is that you're then going to get grilled on it in your interview, right? So just be careful there. But that's the one thing you could potentially look into. I don't know, Harman, if you have any thoughts on specializing for certain universities.
I will say, if you don't necessarily have access to kind of going to these in-person lectures, yeah, I totally agree. You can watch these kind of online. But also, I mean, me personally, I kind of I led a lot of societies. So I led a history society. I was leading the debate society, and these are things you can actually do kind of sort of on your own in your school and actually mention them as super curriculars. I mean, it could kind of both ways. It could kind of fit into a topic paragraph, but I fit that experience into the kind of super curricular, extracurricular section. And I think that boded well. I remember having a conversation in my interview about what I did as president and kind of the talks I introduced. So that could definitely be something you could add.
That's a great
Fantastic. Point. Thanks so much. There was a question that came up. Teacher may bring it up again. What sort of activity or research should we focus on while studying A-levels? We're ready and have something to write about in our personal statement. So maybe let's talk about it a couple months, maybe a year prior. If they're still in year 12, what should they start doing in preparation?
So there are lots of options here. If you want subject-specific recommendations, again, we've got our subject guides on the ZNotes website. So there you'll get specific recommendations based on your subject. But very generally, essay competitions are a great way to go. Extended projects, so some kind of extended research project. If it's offered by your school, that's great, but you can also just do your own research project, like that's completely fine. Again, we've mentioned attending lectures and things of that nature before, but really doing something independent that's quite research heavy, quite academically oriented is a great way to go. I really like Harmon's suggestion as well of starting your own society. Again, shows enthusiasm, shows you're really interested in the discipline. Harmon, I don't know if you'd have anything to add there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should just sort of follow what you're naturally curious in. I mean, like things will naturally in your subjects, you would naturally be kind of inclined to different subjects or different subtopics, and I think you should follow that curiosity and let kind of research interest develop from that. So for example, if you kind of develop an interest in microeconomics and maybe, for example, game theory, you can kind of do some more reading on that and let kind of your curiosity follow from that. So if you've read some game theory, you might want to kind of follow that and maybe look at it in a more kind of practical business setting, and maybe read another book about that and like see. And after you've read that book, maybe you want to kind of read a bit of a history book that kind of talks about this kind of in a longer context. So I think follow your natural curiosity, and I would say you would definitely have enough material if you do that.
Sure. I really like that, and I think it's super important to realize that this is a 12-month, 24-month journey of applying, and then after that, you're in that course for 3 years. So you really got to love that subject that you're pursuing, and actually, you're at a good head start if you're thinking about it now, because you can actually read a topic and actually say, oh, I don't like this at all, or love it. Let me go 3 books deep into it. I have a question from Lucas, which I actually would love to input on as well at some point, but I'll bring it up. Lucas is asking about how he chooses between multiple similar universities, such as Oxford and Cambridge, but also Imperial, and what factors should his personal statement affect. So I guess he's like saying, okay, what if, when you apply with UCAS, you're applying to 5 unis, how do I make sure it's applicable to all the 4 or 5 unis that I apply to? Maybe I'll start with Andrew, because I know you applied to LSE and Cambridge, got into both. What would you do there? Or does it work across all 4?
Yes. So I firstly attended quite a few open days for quite a few different subjects. So originally I was going to apply for philosophy, and then I had a chat with a Cambridge philosophy professor. I was like, this isn't the subject for me. And so that's how I realized economics was my true calling. So attend lots of open days, number one. You can also look at the specific modules that are offered by each of the degrees. So that can be a very good way. I know that, for example, one of the reasons I chose LSE over Cambridge was that in third year, they had this really cool behavioral economics course that was led by one of the thought leaders in behavioral economics. So that really excited me. Location matters as well. So at LSE, I got to live in a city. So you get to, I suppose, you're exposed to perhaps a wider diversity of people. Although I'd say the same, probably true at Oxbridge in many ways. But yeah, I think open days, modules, and then the last thing I'd recommend is even reaching out to current students. So if you know somebody, that's amazing. But even if you don't, you can go on LinkedIn, or you can Google. You can even contact the university and say, hey, I'd like to speak to a current student. And you'll then get insider information on what that degree is actually like, which you could even include in your personal statement.
Great stuff. Harmon, what about you?
Yeah, I would actually start off with regularly asking yourself the question of like, what do you actually want in your university education? I think Oxbridge, LSE, Imperial, these are all similarly prestigious universities. However, like they take a very different approach. As alluded to earlier, you do have a lot of contact hours in an undergraduate degree at Oxbridge, and that's great. I personally enjoyed that, but I have a lot of friends who didn't necessarily want that, who wanted to kind of sit at the back of a lecture, take notes, and kind of like independently study, and then maybe apply for internships and then go clubbing in the evening. Like that's sort of the days and nights that they wanted. Whereas I think if you go to Oxbridge, you're kind of you're sort of all in with academia and kind of embracing that. So I guess that you need to sort of ask yourself the question, like, what kind of student are you? Do you want that contact time? Not everyone necessarily will want that, first of all. And second of all, I would definitely second a lot of what Andrew said. I mean, you definitely talk to people. I think you need actual data and to speak to people. So you can't really make the decision without being informed. So yeah.
Thanks, Harman. Maybe changing my role from a host to just contributing a little bit. So I, a proud Oxford reject, I applied to study math there. Didn't make it even to interview stage, actually, and ended up with offers at Imperial, UCL, Durham, and another. And can always think back to that decision. I'm so grateful that I ended up at UCL with an amazing university. And I think that the point, Andrew, that you mentioned, which is around like diversity of experiences, and Harman as well, like what do you actually want your day-to-day look like? I think we have a specific idea of what a university experience is like. I spend a lot of time, watching vlogs and reading about experiences. Again, going to flag our uni guides that we've built with Socrasica. There's amazing resources out there which even say, okay, what's it like studying economics at Oxford? Check it out. Think about whether that fits with your lifestyle choices as well. For me, when I decided to take ZNotes into a more entrepreneurial direction, I could not have gone with a better uni that really supported me and incubated it and helped me stay in the UK. So I would say that we have a certain notion of what our lives will look like and what we are experienced with. I also grew up in a cosmopolitan city, and if I went to Oxford or Cambridge, where I did live actually in Cambridge for a little while, it's a very different experience, right? I came from a city with millions of people into a little town. May not have been exactly the same expectation either. So it's really, really important that the course, the ranking, the prestige is also associated to what you wish your life to look like. I think we sometimes don't prioritize that as much, especially when we're thinking about for 3 years. I'm going to have a quick look through the questions again. So there are a couple of questions around like grades and how high or how low they need to be. I'm not sure if we can give too much input into that. Maybe one or two things that I'd like to highlight. Lucas's questions around what are preferences in ECs, like how can you select something that they spend more time on? I don't know if you have any ideas, Andrew, on that.
Sure. So again, your extracurriculars really don't matter much if you're applying to UK universities. If you're applying to the States, they matter tremendously. But the only ECs that would be preferred would be extracurriculars that are kind of actually secretly supercurriculars. I'll give you an example. So I ran a little company while I was applying to university, and so that's an extracurricular, but I made it into a supercurricular by explaining how I use Porter's 5 forces analysis and things like that to merge it into economics. Mm-hmm. So there's no particularly strong preference, but if you can find a way to merge your extracurriculars into your supercurriculars, that can be useful. But otherwise, if you play the trombone or you play the piano, it doesn't matter. It's still wonderful that you've got something else going on outside university, outside academia, I mean.
Gotcha. That's a really cool idea, Harman. I wonder whether you were doing anything like that in your. I mean, you talked about your society, but is there anything else that really like helped you stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of go back on those experiences. I think they were definitely experiences that were like adjacent, very relevant to the study of history, like debating, being president of the History Society, like they were directly relevant. And also, I sort of like lived and breathed kind of history, politics during my 2 years, kind of in the run up to university. And so, I guess my advice with this would be, the priority would be to live and breathe your subject and be very passionate about it and do things that reflect that passion, and that those experiences would always bode well in a kind of extracurricular paragraph. No big deal about the trombone or piano.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's super helpful. I'm gonna bring up another question from Kurin, which talks about she has 3 humanities and 1 STEM subject: biz, econ. I think that's global perspectives and CS. She wants to do CS with a focus in tech at Oxbridge or better universities. How do you show an interest in the subject in a personal statement. Maybe what I want to surface here is that like maybe business and tech is not a typical thing you would do at school. So how do you start to target certain subjects which are maybe a little bit more, uniquely done only at university level, that may not have a direct link to an A level or an IB?
Yeah, so this is something I wanted to mention earlier. Online courses are an amazing way to really upskill in a new subject, particularly if you haven't taken it at A level or IB.
Yeah.
So right now, if you go into Coursera, if you go into edX, if you go into MIT OpenCourseWare, if you just Google online courses in really any discipline whatsoever, you can learn absolutely anything, and it's incredible. So just recently I completed MIT's quantum physics introduction to quantum physics course, not because I'm applying to become a physicist, but just because I was excited. That would be enough if I were looking to reapply to university, to create a really powerful personal statement around. So online courses, I would say, are your best options there.
Got it. That's super helpful. I think this also kind of answers Lucas's other question, which is around there aren't any viable local competitions for that subject. There's so much more stuff happening online these days. And really what you're trying to surface is your interests and aspirations beyond the kind of limitations of your A levels or IB. So everything you're trying to do is showing that proactiveness. I loved how you're talking about your extracurriculars and linking it back to skills you may need at uni or skills that you may need in your actual academic degree course. I talked about ZNotes. You were talking about your business. I talked about ZNotes in my personal statement, and I was applying for mathematics. But I said, here I am. I'm trying to build a social impact startup. I'm trying to make it globally accessible. I'm leveraging, abstractification skills and problem solving skills. I'm doing web development. I'm learning about algorithmic, exactly. Things like that. And you really can build a story. And there was nothing like untrue about those either, but it was definitely, it was a story to tell, right? I could have told 10 different stories about the same experience. And so it's really cool how you bring that overarching kind of theme. You do need to show that motivation for the subject matter when it's Oxbridge, and then combine that with any and all that you're doing around your life. So I think that would be, sorry, again, switching my host role, but sharing my take on that as well. I think this is ZNotes is a killer EC. And by the way, Lucas and all those listening in, you are also very welcome to apply for our internships and ambassadorships and contributions as well. Our past members have always gone on to top unis, talking about that experience in a more contextual way. So small plug. I think we're getting to the end of the session. I'd love to bring Tiksha back onto stage, who's been on the background helping us, making sure all the questions and everything looks smooth and everything perfectly well. So maybe Andrew, one final message about Socrasica and how we can get more interest and support on our personal statements before we wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we've developed these subject guides for almost 40 different subjects. They're written by subject experts, and they're super specific to that specific subject. So this has been quite a generalist presentation, but if you're looking for specific help on mechanical engineering, I think came up, or business, please do check out those guides on ZNotes. And if you would like help with feedback on your personal statement, reviews, grammar checking, anything like that, you can visit the Socrasica website directly.
Awesome. I'm also just sending a message in the chat with the website link, as well as 2 other resources that you've very kindly put together. One are the 10 Oxbridge example statements, yes, and the other is the cheat sheet that is kind of a summary of the slides that we had today.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have a look through the document. Yes, with the 10 Oxbridge example statements. I've given feedback on each of the personal statements. All of those statements were successful Oxbridge applications. And so you can see in full what a really good personal statement looks like.
Perfect. Thank you. Teacher, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Zubair. Thank you for all your great questions. We apologize if we couldn't address each one, but we hope you found this session valuable. A big thank you to our audience for joining us, to our esteemed speakers for their time and expertise, and to Socrasica for partnering with us on this event.
Before we conclude, I'd like to take a moment to ask you to complete a quick survey at the end of the session. So we're going to shoot over a QR code on the end of the screen just for you to kind of connect with our partners, tell us a little bit more about how we can improve our sessions in the future as well.
Once again, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you at future events. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
You guys.
Bye.
Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.